Welcome to the Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington. My name is Sharon Page. I'm the office, I want to say office assistant, but now they tell me I'm the office administrator. But I also am on the worship team, so that means I get to be a celebrant every once in a while. So here I am today as your celebrant. And our speaker today is Rader. She serves on the greeters team. She heads up those fine young people. She does a great job. I got to brag on her. She takes care of all those pretty flowers. And every once in a while I come in the office and there's a pretty bouquet of flowers. And I go, Chris is so sweet. And she's also on the building and grounds team and the worship team. She's busy. So.
Ad-libbing here.
She doesn't want you to think she put all that stuff in there for herself. So if you're a visitor today, we're so glad you're here. We welcome every person of goodwill, just as you are. Whoever you are, whomever you love, and however you got here, you're welcome. And whatever your age, whatever body you inhabit, and however you get around, like me. I've got a strange body to inhabit, but it's okay. You're welcome here. So, we invite everyone to join us for a social hour afterwards, and then both in person and on Zoom, they have that. And for the folks on Zoom, you can find our order of service in the chat. So, please take a moment and greet each other. Say, how? Okay. It's really good to be together this morning in all the ways that we gather. And we're so glad you're all here. I'm glad I'm here. Hi. So our fellowship is located on the ancestral homeland of the Pasquosa people. For thousands of years, the Pasquosa have been stewards of this land, fishing, hunting, gathering roots and berries, and practicing cultural traditions. The Pasquosa still live here. We acknowledge that their land has been taken over because the U.S. government broke treaties, obligations, and carelessly allowed uninvited white colonizers to settle here. We stand alongside our indigenous neighbors as they continue their traditions and seek to have all their rights recognized. We acknowledge our shared responsibility to sustain right relationships with each other and with the land.
Words today are by Richard Gilbert, a poem called Gentleness in Living. Be gentle with one another. It is a cry from the lives of people battered by thoughtless words and brutal deeds. It comes from the lips of those who speak them and the lives of those who do them. Who of us can look inside another and know what is there of hope and hurt, or promise and pain? Who can know from what far places each has come, or to what far places each may hope to go? Our lives are like fragile eggs. They crack and the substance escapes. Handle with care. Handle with exceedingly tender care, for there are human beings within. Human beings as vulnerable as we are, who feel as we feel, who hurt as we hurt. Life is too transient to be cruel with one another. It's too short for thoughtlessness, too brief for hurting. Life is long enough for caring. It is lasting enough for the sharing, precious enough for love. Be gentle with one another.
So this is the time in our service when we kindle a world in lighting our chalice this morning. Please join as we say the chalice lighting words. In the light of truth, and we to seek and seek to share.
Unitarian Universalists draw inspiration from many sources. We actually have a description of those sources in the front of our hymnal, along with our 7 principles. You can peruse them at any time, just right up here, one of the very first pages with the sources and the principles. Today we're going to hear from 2 different faith traditions, Buddhist and Hindu. The Dalai Lama writes, "We humans are social beings. We come into the world as the result of others' actions. We survive here in dependence on others. Whether we like it or not, there is hardly a moment of our lives when we do not benefit from others' activities. For this reason, it is hardly surprising that most of our happiness arises in the context of our relationships with others. Nor is it so remarkable that our greatest joy should come when we are motivated by concern for others. But that is not all. We find that not only do altruistic actions bring about happiness, but they also lessen our experience of suffering." The Hindu term namaste is sometimes said to mean, "The divine within me bows to the same divine within you." Namaste is actually 2 words, with nama translating to terms like praise, honor, bowing. The second word, te, means to you in this context. So put it together and namaste means praise to you, salutations to you, honor to you, or I bow to you. The divine in you interpretation comes from the Hindu belief that God resides in everyone, so any person you greet deserves respect. The gesture is an acknowledgement of the soul in one by the soul in another. And the gesture is like this: let's all greet each other with the namaste. A few months ago, I was trying to get my kitty to go into her carrier so I could take her to the vet. She kept jumping out and clawing me and pushing through the lid and running away. She just wouldn't stay in that carrier. I got pretty mad, or at least frustrated. I had to call the vet and cancel the appointment. Still in a bad mood, but wanting to distract myself, I went over to the public library to use the microfilm machine for a research project. After a while, I noticed a man wandering around the bookshelves, obviously looking for something but not being successful. I spoke in my halting Spanish to him, asking if he needed help. He smiled and seemed grateful and told me what he was looking for. I checked the shelves with him, but I couldn't find it, so I went down with him to the computers and logged into the classification system. We couldn't find the answer there, so I took him over to a librarian, and she knew just where to look and led him away. I went back to my work with the microfilm and suddenly realized how happy I was. I remembered how annoyed I'd been at my cat not long ago and was tickled at the change in my mood. Helping this man, or at least getting him to the person who could help him, had made me feel really good. I bet this is no surprise to you all. Haven't you noticed how happy you are when you do something nice for somebody? Here's another little story for you. Our friend Elliot Scull, a member of this congregation, got up one Sunday during Joys and Sorrows and talked about a woman who had just moved into the retirement community where he lives. She seemed unhappy to be there. Somehow, Elliot found out that this woman had never been in a convertible, but had always wanted to ride in one. And hey, he had a convertible, and it was a nice warm spring day, so he invited her to go for a ride with him. He drove her around town, past some beautiful homes and gardens, and even up to the nice viewpoint on Skyline Drive. When he brought her back to the retirement home, she was so glad and grateful. Elliot told us, "I was so happy after that. It was the best thing that happened to me all week." Many research studies over the last 30 years show that people who perform random acts of kindness feel less stressed, that not only their emotional, but their physical well-being is improved when they reach out to others. Being kind boosts serotonin and dopamine, which are neurotransmitters in the brain that give you feelings of satisfaction and well-being, and cause the pleasure reward centers in your brain to light up. Endorphins, which are your body's natural painkiller, can also be released. Studies indicate that simply witnessing acts of kindness can have positive side effects. Kindness can increase self-esteem, empathy, and compassion, and improve mood. Kindness can increase your sense of connectivity with others, which can directly impact loneliness, improve low mood, and enhance relationships in general. Dr. Martin Seligman is considered by many to be the father of positive psychology. He grew up in a low to middle income Jewish family and was a scholarship student at Princeton University. There, he was often snubbed by his rich elite fellow students, partly from their anti-Semitic leanings. He still excelled. Studying psychology, Seligman became disillusioned with its fixation on pathology or negativity, mental illness, and so on. So he started researching well-adjusted, happy human beings. He conducted many evidence-based scientific studies to explore happiness and optimism. One of Seligman's conclusions was that individuals can choose the way they think. This is not a brand new concept, but it's a powerful one. He also felt that the epidemic of depression in today's society stems partly from the rise in individualism and the decline in the commitment to the common good. He said one solution to this is to change that balance, increase the percentage of dedication to others, and reduce the preoccupation with self. Giving to others, he said, and forging strong social bonds are crucial. Place less emphasis on individualism, bucking traditional rules, distrusting authority, and focus more on unity, acceptance, and connected community. This sounds like Unitarian Universalism, doesn't it? In his book, Authentic Happiness, Martin Seligman tells a story from his days as a young psychology professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He and his students were returning from a day-long field trip, riding a bus through snowy Philadelphia streets. They were almost back to campus when one of the college boys looked out the window and saw an elderly woman shoveling her sidewalk. "Could you stop and let me out?" he asked the bus driver. "I can walk back from here." The young man took the shovel from the woman and shoveled the rest of her walkway. Of course, she was grateful, and he felt good. The next day, when discussing the findings from their field trip, the young man cited helping the old woman as the high point of his day. What is it about helping someone that makes us feel good? I believe it has to do with forging connection, with knowing that we are all one, we are all part of an interconnected web of existence, as UU's seventh principle says. Sometimes we have to train ourselves to see somebody as the child of God, worthy of love and respect. This is normal human behavior. We aren't all sweet, perfect, tolerant, positive people all the time. Sometimes we get mad, or at least irritated, at another person's behavior. It's okay to acknowledge our feelings, but it's not okay to lash out at the other person to hurt them. You can ignore the person or recognize that they might be having a bad day. You can indulge what my friend Lee calls your shadow side and view the person in a negative light, but do it silently without attacking them. Or best of all, you can consciously work to see something good in the person and to recognize that nobody is perfect, but we're all interconnected and all have worth and dignity. I sometimes exhibit the unfortunate trait of impatience. I can get annoyed when people are moving too slowly for my comfort level. I know about this trait, and I work to overcome it or at least not let it dictate my behavior in situations where I feel impatient. I don't always succeed, but one time, years ago, I consciously decided to choose kindness over snarkiness, and I was glad. I was grocery shopping at Marlin Boy's grocery store in Leavenworth, which is now called Dan's Market. I shopped there all the time, and I knew all the staff. One day, there was a new young woman at the checkout stand. She was chattering and chattering away with the customer ahead of me in line, even though that person's transaction was finished. I'm thinking to myself, come on, come on. But luckily, when the other customer finally left and the new checkout person turned to me, I did not make a smart remark or let my impatience show. I was tempted to snap at her, but overcame the temptation. I was friendly to her, and all went well. I soon learned that this new gal was the daughter-in-law of the store owner and was a permanent fixture there. I was so glad I'd conquered the impulse to start off a new relationship on the wrong foot. Do any of you have this tendency to let impatience guide you into rude, get-even behavior? It's part of my shadow side that I'm constantly working on. Of course, there's a cynical saying related to this. Be nice to people you meet on your way up. You'll meet them again on your way down. So back to try a little kindness and another scientific study from the University of British Columbia. A group of highly anxious individuals were directed to perform at least 6 acts of kindness a week and to report on them. After 1 month, there was a significant increase in their positive moods, relationship satisfaction, and a decrease in social avoidance in those socially anxious individuals. Stephen Post of Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine found that when we give of ourselves, everything from life satisfaction to self-realization and physical health is significantly improved. Mortality is delayed, depression is reduced, and well-being is increased. According to research from Emory University, when you are kind to another person, your brain's pleasure and reward centers light up as if you were the recipient of the good deed, not the giver. This phenomenon is called the helper's high. A Stanford University study found that kindness can be contagious. Their report said, in part, the positive effects of kindness are experienced in the brain of everyone who witnessed the act, improving their mood and making them significantly more likely to pay it forward. This means one good deed in a crowded area can create a domino effect and improve the day of dozens of people. I just recently read a story on Facebook about a man who was both blind and deaf and taking an airplane trip by himself. The flight attendants did their best to make him comfortable, but he couldn't see or hear them. They were lightly touching his face and patting him in reassurance, but didn't feel that they were getting through to him. So one of the attendants went on the public address system and asked if there was anybody on the plane who knew sign language. Lo and behold, a 15-year-old girl raised her hand. She had chosen ASL, American Sign Language, as the language she was required to study in high school. She switched places with the person sitting next to the man, and for the entire flight, she was able to spell out letters and words into the stranger's hand, with him signing back to her. Wasn't that a kind thing for her to do? The man was happy and relaxed at the end of the trip. When the plane came to a stop, all the passengers clapped in appreciation. Many people thanked the girl as they left the plane. I think this is a neat illustration of how witnessing acts of kindness can bring joy to all around. And did you know that kindness is teachable? University of Wisconsin's Dr. Richie Davidson said, quote, "It's kind of like weight training. We found that people can actually build up their compassion muscle and respond to others' suffering with care and a desire to help," unquote. Child psychologist Dr. Bhawani Balamudi says it's important to teach children while they are young how to be kind. She encourages volunteering with your kids so they can have the experience of feeling good when doing things for other people. It's equally important, she says, to learn and practice self-kindness. She says, quote, "It is very important to be kind to yourself because we are all living in a highly competitive society and we're constantly comparing ourselves to others and putting ourselves down. We often engage in negative self-talk, and that leads to negative feelings, negative emotions. This, in turn, can lead to anxiety and depression," unquote. Balamoody advocates using the good neighbor rule when it comes to self-kindness. She says, treat yourself as you would treat your neighbor, with kindness, respect, and love. If you wouldn't say it to your good neighbor, do not say it to yourself. Once again, I think it comes back to the fundamental UU principle of acknowledging that all people have inherent worth and dignity. It's about love your neighbor. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is credited with popularizing the term beloved community. He taught that the foundation of beloved community is the divine indwelling that equally graces all people. He wrote, "There is no graded scale of essential worth. There is no divine right of one race which differs from the divine right of another. Every human being has etched in his personality the indelible stamp of the Creator." I personally am comfortable with the notion of God and inspired by it. For others who don't care for that term or concept, try spirit of life, or higher power, or nature. Or, as Deb Miller once shared in a sermon here, GOD stands for good orderly direction. I was raised with the axiom of God is love, and was taught that most bad situations could be improved by pouring out more love. Of course, I don't always manage to do that, but I haven't forgotten that lesson, and I do try to follow it. Regarding Dr. King's vision of beloved community, a divine indwelling that equally graces all people, the Reverend Shirley Strong wrote, quote, "I understand the term beloved community to mean an inclusive, interrelated society based on love, compassion, responsibility, shared power, and a respect for all people, places, and things. A society that radically transforms individuals and restructures institutions," unquote. And in Martin Luther King's words, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? I hope this makes sense to us all, and that we'll all go forth with renewed love and treat others with kindness. May it be so. Our final words are from the writer and humanitarian Albert Schweitzer. "At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us." And now, as we extinguish our chalice, please join with me in saying the words written in your order of service.